You gonna keep it a bean?
Yeah.
Who won that?
Man.
You said you go. You said you gonna get it close.
It was close because, you know, and the reason why I say it was close because, you know, K Dot and the overseers was nice. Snacks, you know what I'm saying? Like
Snacks, I remember Snacks. Yeah.
my man Snack Wigs, man. Like, you know what I mean? You know, they was bringing it, man, and they was fired too. They wasn't like they wasn't no pushovers. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of people like that I got in front of the camera battling Meek at that time, you know, he was running through dudes. Like he was just, you know, he was like dude, like 'cause, you know, if you was hot in the city, you had to go through Meek, and Meek was just like, you know, he was demolishing shit, like you know what I mean, like. He was demolishing shit, like you know what I mean, like, and that night, you know, they kind of gave the Hounds a run for their money.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was neck and neck, so I ain't gonna be biased because they all my family, like you know what I'm saying. It was neck and neck. I'll just say that.
Okay. So now we transition, right?
Yeah.
So you recording now.
Yeah.
And you getting battles and things like that.
Yeah.
So at that time you start actually focusing on the Bloodhounds, or did something click in your head like, hold up, let me get this historical
Yeah.
because you see where this was going.
Yep.
You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
And I think you seen it more so than anybody.
Yeah.
That's why you grabbed your camera and recorded, because nobody else got footage like that.
Facts.
Besides you.
Yeah.
So what made you be like, hold, let me grab this camera
Yeah.
and let me start filming this, because this gonna be something.
Yeah, so I went from just like recording random street shit and just like random, you know, just random stuff to focusing on my guys. You know what I'm saying? Bloodhounds. And then it went from, you know, focusing on just Bloodhounds to just focusing on Meek. You know what I'm saying? Just like, all right, like, you know, I always was a visionary and always, you know, saw the potential of my guys, and especially when Meek started like turning it up in the city, I was just like, I always saw his star power and it was just like, yo, like, you know, this dude is a star. Like he always had that star power. So I started just focusing on him. You know what I mean? Because we was just being overwhelmed by like dudes, like, you know, every day in the summer, like somebody was calling the phone like, yo, I got this artist and we want to come down, and you know what I mean? So it was like that. Even like I was at work. I used to work at the movies on Columbus Boulevard. Yeah, I used to work at the movies, you know what I mean? And most days I would have to, you know, call out early or not go in at all because the summers was so lit. And you know, I'd be at work, you know what I mean, on the popcorn, you know what I'm saying, taking tickets, and they'd be like, yo, such and such coming down to the block, you know, what's up with the camera? And I'd go to my manager or my supervisor and be like, yo, I'm sick, or yo, an emergency, just to go home. You know what I mean? I even get on a 29, take it up to 19th and run home, or I run down to the 79, get off at 20th, go grab my camera, and then meet them on Mercy Street. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, and then from there, you know, we'd go to, you know, what we call a burger, you know, which was like, you know, Hamburger Street. We would go back there and just like watch all of the tapes. You know what I'm saying? So that's when I like, you know, I just focused, my whole focus was like on Meek after that.
So when you was recording and you was focus on Meek,
Yeah.
did the Bloodhounds was already put together, right?
Yeah.
Which is them four,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So who was the did they all come in collectively together, if you know, or was it Mel Love first
Yeah.
and Meek, or was it Mel Love and Pooh, or
Yeah. So it was more so Meek, that nigga Lil and Mel Love. Young
okay,
Pooh had came in later. Young
mm-hmm.
Pooh had came in like around the Blood In Blood Out mixtape.
Okay,
Yeah, and like a lot of the shit that was on the Blood In Blood Out, mixtape, like he was putting those hooks together. He was always, you know, nice with the hooks and
okay,
nice with the bars. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's
for
documented, like
sure,
Young Pooh. Like,
yeah,
but I think he came in a little later because once he started coming around, I was like, damn, who that?
mm-hmm.
And then, once he started spitting, I'm like, oh, all right, yeah,
Okay,
he a great fit,
mm-hmm.
for the Bloodhound. So initially, I think it started up, it was just Mel Love, that nigga Lil Meek Mill, and then Young Pooh had came in later.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what part of what section of the city did Pooh come from, if you know?
Um, I think Pooh, if I'm not mistaken, Pooh came from the small side,
Okay.
He came from the small side, yeah. Cause they was all from, Catherine Carpenter,
Carson.
like, you know what I'm
Okay.
saying? Yeah, like his
Okay.
older brother, DeMel.
That makes sense though,
Yeah,
because they are from the south. So he definitely would, yeah,
right.
to fit right in.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, so they all came together and they formed a group, the Bloodhounds.
Okay. Now, once the Bloodhounds is formed, right,
Yeah.
and you filming, you got it rolling.
Yeah.
At what point did you see like, yo, this turning into something crazy? Like this
Yeah.
turning into something big.
Yeah.
Like this when you start getting into, headshot, top
Yeah.
class, and
Yep.
all that. Now,
Yep.
now go in, get into detail for that. For
Yeah,
like
so
when
that
you
era,
start
man,
seeing that,
that
yeah.
era when they when the city got behind them,
Mm-hmm.
and I like to call it the DVD era. You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yep.
Like around that time, whereas though you had the top class, you had the Go Getters, you had Headshot Records.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You had groups like the Bloodhounds and the Overseers and So once the city got behind them,
Mm-hmm.
and you start seeing people like gravitate to them and they buying the mixtapes.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? They doing shows.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like, damn, like, yo, it was like,
Mm-hmm.
it started to get a little crazy
Yeah.
because like, like I said, we all came up together and just like to see them get the notoriety at a young age, and like they was really doing it, like,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I'm saying? So I was always, fascinated by it because like I was doing music too, but
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't really out there like how they were. Like they
Mm-hmm.
was getting noticed and they
Mm-hmm.
was like, they was doing shit. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
know what I'm saying? And I always looked up to that. But one thing that I was doing that they wasn't doing, like just a little side note, was I was really making music. I was really doing, hooks. You know what I'm
Okay.
saying? 3 verses, 2, 3 hooks. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Them niggas, they was just freestyling
Right.
and they was just rapping. You
Okay.
know what I'm saying?
So usually on the concept of making songs.
Right. So they would like, Young Pooh, especially like I remember one day he was just like, yeah, he was like, Drew Major, he part of Bloodhounds, you know what I'm saying? He like our Kanye West. You know what I'm saying? And I was offended by that back then.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm
Wow.
saying? Because it was just like, nah, like I'm harder than that.
Oh, right.
But like looking back at it now,
The artistic value that he was given, like
yeah,
genius.
right. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like on that tip, like, nah, like he
Yeah.
basically was saying, like, yo, we doing something different. Like Major, he like, really, he different.
Yeah.
That's basically was saying, like what he was saying, like, Mage like got this formula
Mm.
which they started to follow. You know what I'm saying? Like, and then, that's what separated Meek from a lot of the artists in Philly because dudes was just still freestyling
And
and
he was
just
doing
rapping,
songs.
and he was doing songs.
Nobody could touch him in the city with the songs.
Yeah,
When it
and
comes to
then,
that, like
once
he,
I'm in my bag came out, out of here.
I'm.
You know
I need
what I
to.
mean?
I want to hear that. I want to hear that now, cause that's my joint. Cause
Yeah, I remember when
in
he
my
first
bag
played
and
that for me.
for real.
Yeah, we was because Lil had got booked, and we had a free that nigga Lil party, and we
I
was
think I remember that. I think I remember that.
we had the free that nigga Lil party at the Motor Inn on City Line Ave.
Okay.
And I forget who was DJing. Was either DJ Difference or my man DJ T Money. I think it was DJ T Money because I remember we got pictures from. I still got pictures on Facebook from that night. So it was DJ T Money. He was
Okay.
DJing, and Meek was just like, "Yo," he was like, "Yo, Mage, listen to this real quick." And DJ Money put it on. I put the headphones on, and when I first heard it, I was like, "Yo, this the one, cuz." You know what I'm saying? Like this the one. And then once Cosmic Kev, got his hands on it, and the city, that shit was out of here.
It definitely was.
Yeah.
It definitely was.
Yeah.
So at that time,
Yeah.
like you say, when it started blowing up, did you start? Because I think that's the round of time. Did you say? Because it still was Bloodhounds, but when did you start seeing Meek like separate a little bit? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like like it's still four of them,
Yeah.
but people was gravitating more towards him.
Yeah. I would like to say when he came home, when he was locked up for those little couple months, those little few months from, the case that he had caught. The gun case and all that when the cops had went in the house and was beating everybody up, stealing and shit like that. I think he had, a different hunger when he came home. He had a different mindset. And it showed because I think around that time he was more hungry and wanted it more than anybody in the city. You know what I'm saying? And he obtained that. You know what I'm saying? So I think when he came home, he kind of like, separated himself and was just like, yo, like, I'm going solo. You know what I mean? And if I'm not mistaken, I think, he had called home and said that, you know what I mean, to one of our folks and was just like, yo, like,
There's a rat from there.
yeah, I'm gonna do this shit by myself. And when he came home, that's when, he kind of like separated himself from Bloodhounds. I mean, it was still
Bloodhounds, but yeah,
they were still doing music. Like,
for sure.
More focused on his solo career. And he was just like on the tip, like, yo, I gotta go get it. I can't, I can't wait for nobody.
Right.
Nothing holding me back. And that was,
Okay.
that was him, like, separating himself, and then, the rest was history.
Okay. So at that time, when you start filming, was you putting it out there?
What's that?
Under the videos, under Major Films?
Nah, so at that time, I wasn't even Major Films, man.
So when
I was just Drew Major. I was Major Films when Meek signed his deal, and he brought me on, when he signed the deal with Maybach Music, he brought me on as his videographer. And once he brought me on, it's just like I was under all of the videos, I would put Dream Chasers Films.
Okay.
And he was just like, nah, bro. He was like, yo, figure out your own identity. And you know what I'm saying? He was just like, do you, like, you know what I'm saying? And I was just like, damn, like, what I'm gonna do? And then I came up with Major Films. And he was like,
classic.
He was like, yeah, I fuck with that. He was like, do Major Films. And then that was the beginning of Major Films. And that was like 2011.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, how long did that Major Films, far as that aspect of it, run for?
I'm gonna say like a 2011 till to this day. You know what I mean? That's my brand.
So far as the rap scene, so let me rephrase that.
Yeah.
Besides the music,
Yeah.
as far as the Major Films brand, what else do the Major Film brand capture?
So I've captured, of course, you know, Meek Mill, you know, and his time at Maybach, you know what I mean? Of course, Rick Ross. You know, I went on um 2 major tours with Meek. The MMG tour. Um I did some of the Club Paradise tour. That was Drake. That was Drake's tour. And
Okay.
he had brought Meek on, you know, Ross, 2 Chainz. And actually, like, you know, I was in Houston when they came through. I was in Houston with Kyle. So I was in Houston with Kyle Larry at the time, like, you know, and this was like, I'm gonna say, when was that? Like 2011. It was like 2011.
Mm-hmm.
And they came through and we all, you know, I got a legendary picture uh with Drake, Rose, Meek,
Mm-hmm.
2 Chainz, French Montana, Kyle. You know what I mean?
That's decent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, like, you know,
So what you got in store for Major Films coming up?
right now, I'm working on a documentary.
That's
Working on a
tough.
documentary right now, and it's basically the DVD era. You know, it's based around the DVD era through my eyes.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
That's
So
tough.
I'm working on that, and I'm trying to, you know, I'm looking for a 2026 release.
Okay.
So I'm gonna just be grinding, you know, going around getting, you know, all of the footage that I can within this next year.
Mm-hmm.
And then inshallah, you know,
Inshallah.
I'm trying to release that in 2026. But I want it to be a major piece. I want this to be the biggest project that I've ever done. You know
Okay.
what I'm saying? I want this to be, you know, Netflix worthy.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? Whereas though, like,
Which I think it will be.
yeah, or just any major platform,
Yeah.
not necessarily
Netflix, but yeah.
any major
It's definitely gonna be
platform,
major.
yeah, where people could just, like, you know, log into their account and see this project. And right now, you know, I think what I got right now, and I could put it out, you know, and people will appreciate it. But I really want to curate this thing, and I really want to, you know, take my time with it and do it right.